I have been very clear. This is a college football show through and through. Now, with that being said, these guys haven't been drafted yet. They are yet to hear their name called on draft night and put pen to paper on a contract. So until that day comes, I am still claiming them as ours in the college football community. And there's a lot of talk going on right now about who's the top guy, where does Anthony Richardson fall in this whole mix. I've got some thoughts on this. And I've been very, very open about this. I believe Bryce Young is the top quarterback, the top player in this draft. I'm Kevin Costner on draft day. Got a sticky note crumpled up in my pocket, and it says, Bryce Young, no matter what. And I don't care how tall he is. I don't care what he measured in it. I don't care if he's wearing high heels at the NFL Combine to make himself look just a little bit taller, or what Alabama says on their roster. Doesn't matter to me. In fact, knock an inch off of his height, and I'm still taking him number one. Make him 5'9". Doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter to me. You want to know why? Because when you turn on the tape at the high school level, at the collegiate level, Bryce Young does his thing. At the top level of high school football in the Trinity League in Southern California, where you play all the top programs in the country, Bryce Young, California Player of the Year. Then you go to the SEC, you play for Alabama, the NFL junior, essentially, of what college football is. Wins a Heisman Trophy. Probably could have won another Heisman Trophy this past season had he had more help around him. I think that's a very real conversation you could have with Bryce Young. And everyone wants to talk about the risk with drafting Bryce Young. He's got a slight frame. What if he gets hurt? He's only one hit away, you know. You know what? Everybody's one hit away in the NFL, especially at the quarterback position. Everybody's a risk at number one. If you're going to take somebody number one overall in the entire draft, yeah, that's a risk you take. But what's the risk with not taking Bryce Young? What if you miss out on what Bryce Young could be? Because he's shown you what he is at the high school level, at the collegiate level. He has been phenomenal. I understand that he was injured this past season at times, but he's still, one, played through it, and two, injuries haven't been a thing for him throughout his career. Okay, college football in general is a physical game, and Bryce Young was never a guy that was, week to week every single year. He was pretty healthy for the majority of his career. So I think Bryce Young's going to be a success. Whoever you take is a risk. But Bryce Young, from what he's done on tape and what we've seen him do, I don't understand why we're getting so caught up in this height thing right now. Also, food for thought, we've seen the shorter quarterback work. We've seen Drew Brees work. We've seen Russell Wilson work. Heck, we saw Baker Mayfield work for a period of time. Height doesn't seem to be the determining factor. Would you like him to be 6'4"? Sure. But you pass on Bryce Young, I think that is more of a risk than it would be to draft him. It's my own feeling on that. Also, make sure you're subscribed. College football content every single day. We want y'all locked in with us. Follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at JDPikel to stay up with all of this, okay? Next guy I would take is C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. Now, I can already tell you what the knocks on him are going to be. Like, if you're anti-C.J. Stroud, here's what you're probably saying. Well, he never beat Michigan. How'd he play in those games? Threw for 349 in one game and threw for 394 in the other game. So if you want to pin those losses on somebody at Ohio State, I get he's the quarterback, but you can't tell me he didn't show up in those games. You say, okay, well, his wide receivers are so good. Heck, I could throw to those wide receivers. I could throw to Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba. One, I promise you, probably couldn't. Second of all, guess where else the wide receivers are good? National Football League. I'm not worried about C.J. Stroud having weapons in college. I'm not knocking him for throwing to really good receivers. Still got to get him the ball. Okay? The other thing people are going to say, well, he's not mobile enough. The game is trending more and more towards a mobile quarterback that can do it with his legs as well as his arm. Someone like Bryce Young. I'd say, okay, well, he is the first guy we're taking. Second, if you don't want to draft C.J. Stroud because he's not mobile enough for you, that's fine. If that's truly why you don't want to take him, more power to you. I would say this, though. I saw C.J. Stroud take the field in the biggest stage of his career in the college football playoff against the number one team in the country, in the Georgia Bulldogs, the best defense in college football, put on a clinic. 23 for 34, 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. I think CJ Stroud still has more in the tank. I think he's still coming into his own as a quarterback. So if you want to pass on CJ Stroud because of the mobility thing, that's cool. That's cool. It's your draft pick. But I wouldn't do it if he's sitting there and Bryce Young's been taken. I think CJ Stroud is a really intriguing prospect and honestly one of the higher floor prospects in this whole draft. Now, at number 3, here's where we're going to get some pushback. Here's where people are going to start to bark at us a little bit, and that's fine. I'm taking Hendon Hooker as my 3rd quarterback in this draft class. I understand he tore his ACL, but listen, why are we all of a sudden getting amnesia about Hendon Hooker because he hurt his knee? Why is that causing us to forget that at one point in time he was the runaway Heisman Trophy winner? Also, he put on a clinic the last 2 years. 58 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. To me, this is classic NFL draft time overthinking. Okay, the ACL, yeah, it's a bummer. You wish it didn't happen. You'd like your quarterback to be healthy. There's a risk there, too, if you take him that early. I understand all that. But in terms of just quarterbacks that I would trust with my franchise, the ACL is going to heal. Hendon Hooker's going to get better. He's going to be eventually ready to roll for you. And I take him ahead of a lot of the other guys, all right? I'll just say that. We've seen Hendon Hooker be successful. I don't understand why the ACL is causing us just to throw that away. Okay, he didn't run at the combine, didn't work out at the combine, but he's got it under the hood. I'll just say that. The whole narrative around him is, system quarterback. My response to that would be, is a system quarterback beating Nick Saban? Can you strictly be a system quarterback and beat the greatest coach of all time? Forget what Alabama had or didn't have in the secondary. Tennessee had a lot of opportunities to lose that football game. And because of Hendon Hooker, in my opinion, they won. So I don't want to hear the whole system quarterback thing. I think you could say that about any of these guys, to be honest with you. So Hendon Hooker, for me, based on what we saw from actually playing football, again, the sport that they're being drafted to play, I saw more than enough to take him. Now, Anthony Richardson is our 4th guy. And I get the hype on him, right? Like, I understand he went berserk at the combine. And he has all the tools in the world, rocket arm. And the combine, to me, it's understandable why there's hype. But I'm just here thinking, like, did we not already know this about Anthony Richardson? Like, all this did to me was put a number to what we already knew about him. We knew he was really fast. How fast? Okay, 4.4. Yeah, sounds about right. Really big. Yep, 6'4", 240-ish. Cool. Think we all kind of knew that already. I get it if you're drafting him as someone who you trust to develop, right? Like, if you throw him in there day one, I would personally have some pause about that. Why? Again, going back to the whole narrative around the combine versus actually playing the sport. Had some really great games. For the most part, though, pretty inconsistent. I get the rocket arm. I get the freakish athleticism. I understand all that. But also, there were 7 games of the 12 that he played where he threw for less than 200 yards. Now, maybe you say, well, give him Ohio State's offense, give him Tennessee's offense. Okay, I'm cool with that. I'm just saying the accuracy wasn't there for me. He's right around 60%, maybe less than 60% on his career, actually. So that's not great. And also threw for like 60 yards against Missouri. That gives me pause. If you draft him to develop him, I get it. Very, very high reward, but also very high risk. And so juxtaposing that with a guy like Hendon Hooker, who threw 5 picks in 2 years, and AR, who threw something like almost double digits last year. I believe he threw out around 9 interceptions. You see why I have some pause here? When it comes to playing the sport, AR, tons of ability. I get the excitement, I get around the potential, but again, I have a hard time spending a first-round pick, my first-round pick, rather, on AR if these 3 cats are still on the board. It's my own opinion. Now, Will Levis is a guy who has been the face, it feels like, of this draft class, this NFL draft class, rather, when it comes to the quarterback position. Now, I get the excitement around him as well. And what he did at Kentucky left something to be desired production-wise, and you say, okay, it's Kentucky, offensive line wasn't great, he'll have better weapons when he gets to the NFL. I think that's all true, but here's what I just can't shake about him. What's going to happen with these interceptions? Are the interceptions on the weapons? are the interceptions on his offensive line. The decision-making piece isn't going to get easier when you get to the NFL. In fact, it's going to get harder. Those windows are going to close quicker. That shot clock, when it comes to dropping back, it's probably going to be a little bit sped up. And so he threw 10 and 13 interceptions the last 2 years. 23 for those of y'all that are big fans of math at home. That's not just going to go away. He threw 2 picks against Youngstown State. Going back to the comp with AR, I get the tools. I understand that. But when it comes to playing the game, there were things that Will Levis did not do effectively that would make me concerned to draft him. Again, with the caveat that Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Hendon Hooker, and Anthony Richardson are all still available. And you lose the mobility aspect of what you'd have with Anthony Richardson. So that's how I feel about my top 5. Now, here's one guy that I just have a feeling we're not done talking about yet, and that's Georgia's former quarterback, Stetson Bennett. And Stetson Bennett, I don't know if he's got anything that's just extraordinary. Like, I don't know if you watch him and say, yeah, he's got the tools that we really want for an NFL quarterback. Probably not. And you hate the arrest thing that happened. Like, you hate, that's now a thing you have to talk about on top of the fact that he was a walk-on and maybe he's a little bit, how do I say this? He doesn't have the tools that you'd want an NFL quarterback to have. But I would say this, he's got the it factor, which you can't really test for, in spades. You can't ignore what he did at Georgia. Georgia had been trying for a long time to get over the hump and to find a way to win a national title, and they'd recruited great quarterbacks. But even so, they had a 5-star on the roster in JT Daniels, and who ends up winning them 2 national titles but one? Stetson Bennett. He's got the it factor. I think he's extremely football savvy, and he could be a guy that you snag. I believe some people have him in the 4th round. He could be a guy that you snag in that range and ends up doing wonders for you. So for him, it's a little bit lower risk, maybe higher reward, but that's been the narrative around him his whole life. It's always been the afterthought. It's always been the everybody and then Stetson Bennett. So this is no new territory for him. I'm excited to see how he responds. I hope the arrest thing kind of stays in the back seat for the conversation around Stetson Bennett because he's a really good football player and sounds like it was just a poor decision, poor mistake. Live and learn. But for me, that's how I see this NFL draft class shaking out when it comes to the quarterbacks. Again, do not let the combine, not the draft prospects, the draft process change your outlook on these prospects. Okay? At the end of the day, they're getting drafted to play a sport where they just played 12 games of that professionally. So keep an eye on that. Again, I think this is going to be a lot of fun to track over the next couple of days. They are college footballs until they put on that hat for whatever NFL franchise that drafts them. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.